This is a mountain made of literal trash in New Delhi, India. A disgusting, smelly, enormous heap of mostly plastic trash that makes life a living hell for those around it.
आँखों में जलन इतनी हो रही है कि आदमी बस मजबूरी है घर तो छोड़ ही सकते हैं हम।
उसकी लाइफ तो समझिए बहुत ही नर्क लाइफ है।
हाँ, मक्खियाँ भी हैं, मक्खियों की से भी दिक्कत है। सुबह क्या, शाम क्या, दोपहर क्या, हर टाइम मक्खी रहती है। देख भी रहोगे आप लोग यहाँ पे, इससे भी दिक्कत है। अब ये मक्खी गंदगी तो है ही है, गंदगी की वजह से ही खाने वाने पे बैठती है, तो उससे भी दिक्कत ही है हम लोगों को। गंद जो होती है उसकी महक वो भी बर्दाश्त नहीं होती है, और जब आग लगती है तो उसकी भी महक बर्दाश्त नहीं होती बिल्कुल भी।
But Trash Mountain in India is just one of many. There are mountains of trash like this in poor countries all over the world, in Malaysia, Laos, Ethiopia. But here's the thing, all this trash is not from the locals. The Trash Mountain in New Delhi is not just trash made by people in New Delhi. No, the majority of this trash is from rich countries. Ah yes, rich countries produce a ton of trash, and then they ship it off to poor countries. Poor countries have become the West's personal garbage can.
Thousands of people risk their lives collecting trash in one of India's largest landfills.
America can't process all the trash it produces, nor does it want to. So why not ship it off to poor countries that don't have a choice? They are so desperate that they will be thrilled to take it off our hands. And so America has been secretly shipping their plastic trash since the 90s. And from there, all this trash ends up getting burned into the air that we breathe, it gets thrown into our oceans infecting the fish we eat, and infesting the lives of the poor people that have to live in this trash.
That when plastics float out at sea, they actually act as a contaminant sponge. So a lot of contaminants want to be attached to something hard, and plastic is a great substrate for which these contaminants can associate with. When animals eat plastic, they can get this dose of contaminants that can be potentially detrimental for their system.
It's causing everything from tuberculosis to cancer in the people who live near these giant plastic dumps.
The smell just terrible, and I know that this is so-called melting plastic is one of the very important process to recycle plastics. And this smell, I can feel this is make me feel uncomfortable immediately.
Ya rasanya puyeng. Ya paling kalau udah puyeng ya pengen pulang.
बीमारी ऐसी चल रही है, बुखार चल रहा है, काफ़ी लोग पड़े बुखार बीमारी में। सबसे ज़्यादा कैंसर में बहुत लोग मर चुके हैं। बीमारी ये नहीं है बंदवाड़ी गांव में, मांगर गांव भी है, बालेवास, डेरा फतेहपुर, 5-7 गांव लगते हैं। बीमार सब में चल रही है बीमारी।
And does the water also bring more fumes out?
Yeah, fumes. We can not also breathe properly because of these fumes, like ammonia and carbon dioxide, and some kind of like rotten eggs, you know?
Rotten, yeah, everything's decomposing.
Stay dangerous, and this is the economics of third world trash. As a responsible, upstanding American, you always make sure that you toss your soda bottles, yogurt cups, and plastic straws into those shiny blue recycling bins. You've been taught your entire life to reduce, reuse, and recycle.
What more will you do? We must reduce all this garbage we're creating.
Until we get our very own blue box, I'm organizing recycling in our building. Hey, us Cliff Dwellers want this land to have a future too. It's worth it.
I'm reusing this plastic jug and making it into a funnel and a tool holder. Jars, nuts, bolts, screws, nails. Reuse it for the future. It's worth it.
Reduce, reuse, recycle. It's worth it.
It is worth it.
You sincerely believe that whatever you put into the recycling bin is gonna go to a nice clean recycling center where your dirty trash is magically transformed into fresh new plastic products like shampoo bottles, milk jugs, toothpaste caps. The sky is the limits. But what they don't want you to know is that recycling today is pretty much useless. That's because there is actually only 2 types of plastic that is considered recyclable in the US, PET number 1 and HDPE number 2, which are what most bottles and jugs are made of.
Can all plastic be recycled?
No. In order for something to be recycled, the first thing that you have to know is there somebody that wants to buy it to turn it into new products? There has to be a market for that material.
What are some general things that are good to recycle that are plastic?
So they're kind of 4 types of plastic that we accept in our program.
And those are water and soda bottles, milk jugs, detergent containers, tubs for things like yogurt or butter.
Everything else from styrofoam to plastic wrap to grocery bags cannot be recycled because they either produce too many toxins or they kind of just fall apart after going through the recycling process. So in total, only around 9% of all plastic is ever recycled. That's right, all that effort, all that work, all those recycling cans for just 9%. That's because recycling is just too expensive and labor intensive. Plastic needs to be separated out by type and color. You can't recycle an orange detergent jug with a clear soda bottle, and most recycling centers aren't willing to put the money into doing this, especially when it's just cheaper for companies to use new plastic from oil and gas. So what do they do with all this worthless plastic waste? Well, some of it gets burned. Right now, the US is burning 6 times the amount of plastic it's recycling. And these incinerators pump out a whole bunch of cancer-causing chemicals into communities nearby. Plastic might also get buried. The manager of a recycling center in Oregon reported that containers, bags, packaging, strawberry containers, yogurt cups, none of this plastic will be turned into new plastic things. All of it is buried. There are mass graves of plastic all over America, and they won't fully decompose for 500 years. And when it's not burned or buried, all this plastic waste is sent overseas.
The leading countries that pollute the ocean, I think number 1 was Philippines.
I was going to say Southeast. Why would Southeast Asia have that issue?
These are mountains of plastic trash in Malaysia. All this trash comes from places from around the world. For example, this bottle is from the United States of America. This packaging is from Germany. This bag is from the United Kingdom.
India, Turkey, Thailand, Malaysia, all these countries have become the dumping grounds for America's plastic garbage. But it wasn't always like this. See, up until 2017, the US sent most of its plastic waste to China, and it was working really well for a couple of decades. But after a while, things got out of hand. China was given the good recyclable plastics like milk jugs and soda bottles, but they were also given a ton of junk plastic that couldn't be recycled that they either had to burn or dump in a landfill, and this ended up destroying their environments. So in 2017, China banned importing American plastics.
But China says it's not taking in that garbage anymore, a decision that has changed the way countries around the world have to handle their waste, a decision most weren't ready for.
And so America needed a new dumping ground, and they found it in the neighboring poor countries. And so America started selling their garbage to developing countries in Southeast Asia, like India, Thailand, and Malaysia. These same countries were already mismanaging over 70% of their own plastic trash, and yet here they were eagerly buying America's trash as well. Why? Because to them, American trash was like pure gold. Think about it. Recycling companies in these poor countries can buy 1 ton of plastic from America for $150, they can process it, melt it down to pellets, and then sell this recycled plastic back to America for $800. That's an over 500% return. And for a poor country, it was too sweet of a proposition to pass up. And plus, for Western manufacturers, being able to slap a recycled plastic label on a product is valuable. So as a poor waste management company in Malaysia or even Turkey, you'll take on all the plastic you can get. And all that plastic that you can't recycle because it's too dirty or whatever, there is no environmental regulations in these countries unlike America, so you'll just dump it in your local trash mountain or in the ocean, or you'll burn it into the air, and no one will bat an eye. And this will end up having horrible effects on your environments, just like it did for China.
ยังงมหอยขมยังช้อนกุ้งมากินได้กุ้งตัวเล็กๆปลูกผักหญ้าได้ตอนนี้มันก็หมดเลยหมดไปเนี่ยอย่างต้นไม้ชายคลองเนี่ยปลูกเนี่ยรดน้ำไม่ได้แล้วรดน้ำมันก็ตายมันออกซิเจนมันไม่ได้น้ำมันเสียเยอะเช้าเราตื่นมาเราได้อากาศที่ไม่ดีแล้วอากาศแต่ก่อนออกซิเจนเราก็ไม่มีเราก็จะแย่
Yang paling berbahaya di sini adalah sampah styrofoam seperti ini. Nah, kenapa sampah styrofoam? Karena memang dia lebih mudah untuk terurai dan kemudian dia akan lebih mudah untuk melepaskan bahan-bahan berbahaya dan beracun seperti misalnya benzen dan lain sebagainya.
When Kim identified the culprit, he nearly lost hope.
Everywhere you go in this neighborhood, hugging the edge of a giant mountain of waste, you're accosted by the smell of decomposing garbage. In this case right here, it smells like toxic ammonia.
These trash mounds are constantly bursting into flames because of batteries exploding or just because of the heat from the sun.
आपको करीब सर 20 घंटा हो चुके हैं और अब तक एक ही दमकल आई हुई है और ना कोई नेता आया है, ना छोटा आया, ना बड़ा आया, ना बीजेपी का, ना
और ना ओकेजनल अब वजह क्या है इसका क्या कह सकते हैं अचानक आप लोग पीआई कोई लगाता है इसको क्या कह सकते हैं
And the people who live near these plastic dumps in Malaysia are starting to develop a whole host of health problems because of these fires.
End of 2017, my community start finding we are encounter bad air quality. A lot of people been wake up at night time, and the air just look so hazy always. People felt sick.
It's hard to breathe here.
Very hard to breathe here.
You guys live here?
Yes.
Is it hard to breathe here?
Yes. Yes.
Do people and their families have health problems?
ज़्यादा को भी है.
Asthma.
Because of the trash
Because
in the
of
air?
The trash and the air and the pollution.
Okay.
Sometimes they burn it to get rid of the trash. Then the air quality become worse. They'll catch asthma too, like their grandparents.
The burning of plastic will release volatile organic compounds, which constant exposure will bring out cancer of various kinds.
One study found that half of the plastics found in India's trash mountain contains a flame retardant that causes neurological, reproductive, and developmental harms. Garbage pickers work all day separating out plastics because they literally have no better opportunity.
क्या करूँ अपना माँ बाप तो अपना जिंदगी हमारा बनाए नहीं ठीक है 1984 से मेरा यहाँ ये मेरे 2 भाई का जन्म है यहाँ का पैदाशी मैं इसी यहाँ का पैदाशी मैं हूँ ठीक है इसी जगह
स्मेल तो ये है कि हमारी 12 महीने आती हैं यहाँ पे
स्मेल भी नाक के द्वारा सीधे माइंड को इफेक्ट कर रही है बट हमारा सबसे पहला कार्य है कि हम आग पे नियंत्रण कर सकें
तो पूरे बरसात हो रही है माल वाल नहीं मिलेगा हर काम सर्वे लगाते हैं गर्मी होता है ना तो बहुत बरसात के चक्कर में हवा चलता है इतना जोर से आँख में मारता है पानी हवा से चक्कर में तो फिर खत्ते से भग के आ रहे पड़ता
Cara ngindarinya bapak ke bawah didorong sama baket. Cuman salahnya ada bangkolan dari nyangkut.
All these waste pickers who are actually the poorest of the poor and the most backward classes, they have no other option for livelihood. They don't have any other skills. So only the very poor people will actually become a waste picker. These people live around a landfill because that is their source of livelihood. So while we can criticize and say that why do they live here if it is so hazardous, they have so many injuries because they pick waste from the landfills or dump sites with their bare hands. There are sharps lying there, it infects them. Then a daily inhalation of all those toxic fumes in a landfill. I mean, you can imagine when you pass a dhalao or a garbage dump, you have to close your nose. People who are working 24/7 on a landfill, you can imagine they have headaches, they have nausea, they have gastroenteritis, spinal problems. I think that's a part of their daily life.
Almost every piece of plastic ever made is still on the planet in some form or another.
All right, guys, we're on the beach outside the Rio Matagua, and it is heavy, the amount of plastic. This is insane. Check this out.
So, can a network of trash barriers clean the world's most polluted rivers? And are cleaner rivers the key to a plastic-free ocean?
So this is really the bank of the river here, and it's quite astounding to think that if we estimate there may be 10 million to 30 million kilos of plastic flowing through this gorge every single year.
Our plastic coffee cup lids, toothbrushes, and chip bags can be found on every corner of the planet.
Plastic's been found on beaches and seas around the world in incredibly remote places. I talked to one researcher who described going to a tiny, little rocky outcropping, aptly named Inaccessible Island near Antarctica. His crew went ashore in one of their Zodiacs, and there they found plastic bottles. You've all heard reports about the North Pacific garbage patch. And contrary to that film, which we just saw, it really doesn't look anything like the plastic there. It does not look like what they showed in the film. You actually don't find a lot of plastic bags there because they get broken up by the time they get that far out. But it's an area in the Pacific where currents and atmospheric conditions create a slow vortex that kind of traps that pulls in and traps trash from North America and Asia. A lot of it's from Asia. And actually, this is a little misleading because really what it looks like is sort of a dog bone shape with two convergence zones, one near Asia, one near the US, or North America. what doesn't, eventually stuff gets trapped there for a while and then eventually gets spit back out, and it ends up often on beaches. And, unfortunately, this is not the only such place. There are at least 5 similar gyres around the world.
What's leaving land heading out to sea is all the single-use packaging. It's the straws, the bags, the bottles, the cup lids, the stir sticks, all this junk that we use once and throw away. A plastic bottle leaving California will get to Japan in about 3 to 5 years and come back across the northern half of the North Pacific.
Plastic has been found in the stomachs of seabirds.
Every single albatross that you see across this landscape has been fed plastic. So as you open it up, you can see
That's incredible.
all that plastic that's inside this bird.
175 pieces of plastic, including bottle tops, balloon ties, and a doll's arm.
These are all of the pieces of plastic taken from that bird's stomach 3 days ago. It represents about 5 to 8% of the bird's body weight. That's the equivalent of me carrying around 3 to 5 kilograms of plastic in my stomach.
And in the ocean, it's literally snowing microplastics.
Microplastics are some of the smallest pieces of plastic found in the ocean. These microplastics can be as small as the width of a human hair.
We've measured microplastics throughout the water column, starting from the sea surface and going down to 1,000 meters using our robotic vehicles.
We found microplastics at every depth we sampled in Monterey Bay. The most common type of microplastic we found in the deep sea was PET.
Now, most plastic in the ocean doesn't stay in the form that you see it in this bird, or as the movie on the plastic bag showed. Most of it actually gets broken down into little bits, little tiny pieces, and that poses a whole other set of issues. It's these little bits seem to be affecting the ocean ecology. There was just a report showing that a particular variety of sea insect is depositing eggs on these little bits in much higher numbers than ever before. Who knows what that's going to do to the ecosystem out there. But the other and sort of more worrisome, immediately worrisome thing is that these tiny bits absorb toxins that are already in the ocean. They're like sponges, and they pick up things like PCBs and DDTs, persistent organic pollutants that have been in the oceans that were banned, 3 decades, 4 decades ago, but persist in the ocean and get absorbed onto these little plastic bits. Now, for this problem, this might be the poster child. This is a lanternfish. It's much less charismatic than the albatross, but its mothers love them. They're deep sea dwellers that come up at night to feed on plankton on the surface. And research suggests that along with the plankton, they're also eating these little plastic bits. A recent study found 9% of those sampled had plastic in their guts. The concern is if the toxins on these plastics can absorb off of the bits into the fish's tissue, you have a vehicle for moving these toxins up the food chain as they are eaten by bigger and bigger and bigger fish and eventually by us.
And the worst part is that we all know this, and yet you and I will keep buying plastic. Plastic has become too ingrained in our modern lives to give it up. So what is the solution to all of this? Well, as you know, the problem with recycling is that it's too picky. It requires too much sorting, too much manpower. But what if there was a way to recycle where you didn't have to sort through good and bad plastic? Well, that is what one company called Aduro Clean Technologies is working on. Aduro has patented a new way to recycle plastic where instead of having to sort through plastic, all you have to do is feed in a bunch of plastic. The plastic is crushed into simple granules. The plastic granules are then fed into a reactor that breaks down the plastic's long, strong molecular chains into something called hydrocarbon molecules, the exact same type of molecule that is found in fuel. And boom, just like that, you just turn plastic waste into literal fuel that can be used to run anything from cars and trucks to ships and airplanes. No expensive pre- or post-processing required. Think about how powerful that is, turning plastic into fuel without all the downsides and high energy costs. Whereas traditional recycling uses either thermolysis, solvolysis, or dissolution, Aduro is based on a brand new approach that they patented called chemolysis. And the best part is that they've already proven this new approach works in the lab, and they're working on their first pilot build-out this year. But what I think is really cool is their business model. See, instead of just running these recycling reactors themselves, they plan on using a licensing model. That way, Aduro can scale up effortlessly compared to if they were to try to run all these recycling operations themselves. And because Aduro patented this tech, they're gonna have a monopoly over all of it. Think of it as kinda like the McDonald's franchising model, but for recycling. And Aduro was selected for Shell's Game Changer program, by the way. Aduro is the paid sponsor of this video, and Aduro is a public company listed on the stock markets. So if you want to learn more about them, you can check them out by scrolling down and clicking the link below. Scroll down and click the link below now. Full disclaimer and disclosures linked down there as well. Stay dangerous and we'll see you in the next one.